thank you. Thank you for the invitation. It's lovely to be here, wet feet and all. Thank you all for braving the deluge outside. So, I was going to say a little bit about my background. That's already happened. I would say that I come from digital art and media art. That's where my artistic career began. And over the last 15 plus years, I have found myself becoming increasingly less digital and increasingly more concerned with materiality over time. Maybe less digital in the focus, in the sense that, as we can see over there, I'm not showing screens anymore, I'm not doing installations with cables anymore, but I think that in a sense the kind of digitality has sort of sunk into the work in a more intense way perhaps than just this surface level. Okay. What do I have to tap here? Okay. We're figuring this out. So the central theme throughout all of my work is interconnection, the interdependencies that create our conditions. So particularly I've been interested in nature, culture and technology, but also psychology, political and power hierarchies and so on. These interdependencies are what really sort of drives my work. The spread of artificial systems enabled by automation, AI and robotics intensifies the push and pull between the technosphere and the biosphere dramatically. And so we humans belong to the biosphere, of course, but we have also catalyzed the technosphere, though arguably we no longer control it. And thus we sit between these two spheres. So I'm interested in highlighting the inextricable intertwining of these forces in opposition to more traditional Western notions of nature as this kind of passive entity or something that we act upon, but rather sort of really highlighting the ways in which it's an interaction of forces. Okay, here we go. So my whole career has been closely engaged with emerging technologies. These are amongst the most powerful forces shaping the contemporary and future experience. So I think a clear example from recent times has been the fact that NVIDIA has now become the most highly valued company in the world, apparently. This came as something of a shock to me, I have to say, even though this is these are technologies that I've been working with for so long. There's something that feels very dramatic about a company that's, focusing on graphics cards, and therefore obviously there's this sort of projected use of those in AI operations and applications, and the fact that this has become the most sort of highly valued company in the world, the part of the economy that's projected to have the largest growth, I think does say a lot about where we're as a species placing our energy and where we're sort of seeing value in the future. So I have to say at the get-go that I am quite ambivalent about the tech itself and the direction that it's taking us as a society, and this is something that's really been reflected in my work throughout my practice up till now. I do not believe in the values of Silicon Valley. I don't believe in techno-futurism or tech saviorism. I don't really subscribe to the kind of ideas of individual genius that tend to be sort of circulated in a Silicon Valley network, and I don't believe in the ahistoricity that Silicon Valley tends to lean towards. I have, however, followed closely the developments in AI and worked with all of the major iterations of image-generating AIs. A little aside is that, in my opinion, the earlier ones were more interesting and better. Let's bring back worse AIs. What we're looking at here is a piece called They Learn Like Small Children. It's a piece from 2018-2019. It's a collaboration between a set of GANs, so adversarial networks, and my son, who's here tonight, who was 5 at the time, so his drawings. And in a way, you could say that I was sort of trying to get an AI to learn how to draw like a child, and then ask the AI to draw portraits of children in that style. I think we can see that the results are quite eerie. And then there's aspects of the original drawings, my son's drawings, that I sort of extracted from those drawings and used a digital embroidery machine to embroider them onto the banner. As this kind of representation, I guess, of technology as it's developed over time, from physical technologies to commercially applied mechanical technologies through to these neural technologies that we're now talking about. And in doing this, what was interesting to me was the idea of trying to take the tech that was being sort of created in this Silicon Valley network, or this sort of elite high-tech network, and these mythologies, and taking it out of that environment and putting that tech to use in more messy domestic realms, and to see how does it stack up. And part of the idea for this was, at this time I was going to a lot of conferences, I was sitting in a lot of rooms like this one, listening to technologists talking about the burgeoning AI movement. And a theme that came up again and again at that time, and I think you'll still hear echoes of this now, was this idea that AI is in its infancy, or that AI learns like children, it learns by trial and error, all of these kind of comparisons to human development. And given that my university studies were in psychology rather than art, this really had me prick up my ears. I was thinking, okay, in terms of human development, what does that do to the discourse when we are talking about AIs in a kind of parallel to child development? And that was how this collaboration came to be between myself and AI and my son. And I was really interested there in sort of questioning ideas about authorship and also collaboration, which I think obviously is relevant for today's discussion about co-creation with AI. And for me, it was also a way to kind of step outside of my own perspective on these issues. And I feel in general with AI, that's something that I really enjoy, is that it provides an opportunity to create something without this kind of direct purpose or knowledge about what's going to come out of that. So it sort of provides a different perspective on the issue that you're interested in. So I'm going to show a few installation images from exhibitions from the last year, just to give a sense of my work. So here there are, on the left, a video piece, and on the right are embroidered paintings similar to some of the ones over here. And I think it's fair to say that my work is not monolithic. So there are many forms of expression that I use in my work. Foremost, embroidery, which is a mix of machinic, digital, and hand embroidery, but also painting, both digital painting and physical painting, as well as video and sound. The constant throughout my work is hybridity. So it's less a dogmatic approach than a result of 21st century living. And in the process of making the work, I always like to work back and forth between algorithmic digital processes on the one hand and traditional art and craft methodologies on the other. And I find that doing this really provides a kind of fertile cross-pollination between the mediums. So for example, when I've been digitally painting for a long time, using Photoshop, working in layers, thinking in this very kind of digital way, and then I move to a canvas, I find that the way that I'm physically painting with oil paints on the canvas changes and adapts tools from the digital realm into that physical practice. And that's something that I really enjoy, because I feel like it's a way to kind of get at new things within traditional media in art. This is an example of digital embroidery. It's a similar process to the one on the right over there. And so what I've kind of done here is taken a standard embroidery machine and tried to envisage using it as a pack of colored pencils. So I start by taking a digital drawing tablet, I make a series of marks, a kind of database of gestures, drawing gestures. Then I use open source software to turn those into stitchable files. And then I can sit in front of my machine and I always like to think of it as kind of playing an instrument, build up this surface, as you can see over there in the break, similar to the way that you would with coloured pencils. So in general, I think this is kind of emblematic of my approach to technology. I like to make use of many different technologies, but preferably in ways that the manufacturer did not intend. For me, this always produces the most interesting results. So another thing that's really central to the way that I work is trying to expand the idea of technology, consciously combining emerging technologies with heritage technologies in a non-hierarchical manner. And this is really because the future is not made without the past, and these ideas that AI or new digital developments, new technologies kind of pop out of nowhere and revolutionize everything is, in my opinion, wrong. They build on previous technologies. These are living histories that we're seeing in action, and my works, as well as, I think a lot of work that we're seeing out there that's using AI today, are documents of technocultural evolution. And to me, it's important that they include a sort of a spectrum of different technologies from across the course of that evolution. And AI itself is both futuristic and historical by nature. So this is a hand embroidery. This is a really large hand embroidery, and this is also technology. Digital technology can be conceived as essentially craft with electronics. And combining traditionally feminine connoted craft technologies with contemporary digital and algorithmic technologies points to the obfuscated feminist histories of the digital revolution. So, for example, the role of textiles in development of computing, or the fact that the first computers were actually women who were weaving or knitting with cables. Networks. Here, this is an installation that I made last year from a series of hand drawings called entanglements that I began during the pandemic, which were really, for me, a kind of way of illustrating the deep interconnectedness of everything on Earth, from evolutionary perspectives and shared kin to mycelium networks to the digital and social networks on and offline. And Kay Alado McDowell has written about the rise of neural media like AI and how it subsists on the networked mountains of data, nodes, and infrastructure of the web. And this series of paintings, Quantum Entangled, is essentially another way of sort of representing the same idea through the organic world. So here I'm taking an organic subject, like on the left, these mushrooms growing on a log, and on the right, a jellyfish. And I'm using algorithmic tools to modify and estrange the subject from its natural context, and then painting a traditional oil portrait of this hybridized natural artificial subject and kind of reclaiming it in this form as a cultural or artistic object. So how I use AI in these works, as you can see, it starts with a photo, either mine or one sourced from online. Then I use various algorithmic tools to modify that, and then I make a painting of that. And the thought that I sort of have while working with this technology is that perhaps it's more useful to think of it as being co-creation with millions of other people rather than a separate artificial being. Because, of course, AI is an aggregatory technology. The results are based on the work of many computer programmers and technologists, both now and historically, plus, of course, all the millions of creators who put their work online in various forms, and the many labourers and systems in place to categorise and label that content, facilitating AI training. So in this way, like, sometimes if I'm feeling a little bit more kind of spiritually minded, I think about this as kind of being in communion with a bunch of other people, on the spectrum from technology to art and creators, and that this form of working is a kind of hive mind. It gives access to a different way of thinking about things. So the final thought, this is an installation that's currently up in Karlsruhe. It's an installation of that series, Quantum Entangled, and I decided to install the work on this large-scale wall painting because I wanted to, in a way, illustrate the connectedness between the works and this idea of connectedness, and also to kind of break the frame in some ways, to get outside of the canvas itself and to sort of show the way that these things are knitted together beyond this square frame. And I guess that's the final thought that I would leave us with in thinking about AI as well, is how does AI facilitate us escaping from our own perspective?